Hey guys, so I thought I'd make a bit of a shorter video, kind of talking about the state of the game and where I feel the game is struggling currently, and what I think can be done to remedy it, as well as what I think of the newest content thus far, and how I feel the game is going to be going moving forward. So, first thing is, I think one of the biggest struggles that the game currently has is, at least from my perspective, and obviously from the perspective of, just the kingdom that I'm in, PvP is kind of lacking, even though we've had quite a bit of updates that have addressed PvP. PvP is still lacking quite a lot, mainly due to the fact that the way that the PvP mechanics work, it isn't very incentivizing to, or there isn't very much incentive really to really participate in PvP. There's a little bit, but there's not like a huge real, there's no real, I guess, progression, at least a sense of progression, that I think some people want to see. I mean, yeah, there's the rankings. There's a couple events just by chance that'll happen if that'll give you rewards for getting PvP kills, things of that nature. You have Blood Moon, which is a PvE PvP hybrid, and honestly, there's no real point in doing PvP when you could just do the PvE and get all the points that you really want. Obviously, you can get a lot more points doing PvP, but most people just don't. There's no real point in doing it. And then you have the capital war that happens, every so often. Which, I mean, once it's set in stone and you've got the main big alliance, there's no real fight for it unless you have two big alliances that are really clashing in the kingdom, which honestly that's more of a kingdom specific kind of issue, I think. Personally in ours there is no real contender, so you don't really have that kind of fight. You do have the sanctums, which can be fought over, but again, they aren't really touched that much, since there is a cap to, one alliance gets one sanctum, or sanctuary. So, again, you don't really have that much competition. It's more of like a small little squabble over, do the alliances really want to switch it up, or do they just want to take the one sanctuary and get, the gold rewards that come with it and, call it a day, which I think most of the time it's just kind of whoever gets what, they don't really care. Just as long as, the same alliances pretty much get the sanctuary and then they call it a day. That's probably about the only real PvP that you get, apart from people just forgetting to shield, getting hit while they're asleep or away, coming back and then being like, oh, well, okay, that happened, and then just healing up and they're fine. Which is another issue that I think needs to be addressed as well, which is, well, being able to revive troops is all good and great, but, I think that it needs to either be done away with or taken back to the drawing board and reworked in a way that incentivizes people to actually want to zero people out and really being able to zero them out, as really if they are an active player, you're not going to zero them out. They'll just restore everything that they've lost, which kind of defeats the purpose of really even hitting them, because you're not doing any real damage to them, apart from just some time that they have to wait to get their troops back, which if they've got revival herbs, kind of like what I have, where are they at? Yeah, so I mean, I've got so many revival herbs. I mean, that's what, 109 for 500,000 points. I mean, a typical person has what, 2 million points to revive with instantly, unless they've revived soon or recently, then they have to wait for that to recharge, but it doesn't really take that long for it to recharge. and you've got all those revival herbs that you get from events, and some that you can get from purchasing packs and things. It just kind of defeats the purpose. Another thing that I think needs to be addressed is just the kind of progression. I think it needs to be either slowed down a little bit or scaled a little bit better. Just from the perspective that I see some people, having issues with it being free to play. They have a real tough time progressing past a certain point. Personally, I think that point is at probably about the level 26 area for most things. That's when you really start hitting that kind of hard wall to really overcome. Mainly due to the fact that, gold is pretty easy to get. You also have to remember that, for some people it's just not that easy. So I think that needs to be either addressed maybe kind of slowly. I don't think that's really one of the biggest things. I think the main issue is PvP, which can be, addressed in a couple ways, which I'll get to in a minute. As far as the new content that's been added, I think it's been pretty nice. I like the skins for the castles; those are cool. You can get those pretty easily. They're not really locked behind some huge paywall. The holiday event has been pretty nice. The events in general are nice. Blood Moon, I think, is a step in the right direction. Then you have the Invader. I don't really know what you would call it. I guess just the Invader ability, I guess you could say, with the the invasion teleports, which I think is another step in the right direction. Now, I think what could change is, as you can see, with the invasion teleports, you can bestow it on alliance members only, and that's of the ruling alliance, which I think is all good and great, but I think what needs to happen is you need to have kingdom versus kingdom invasion teleports, where everybody in the kingdom has the chance to get an invasion teleport and use it to invade another kingdom, and thus stirring the pot a bit and being able to have PvP on a much larger scale, which I think is what needs to happen, because not only will you have it on a larger scale, you also be able to have it on a bit more of an even playing ground, where the smaller alliances have that chance to invade a kingdom that might have weaker opponents or opponents more around their level, and they can actually contend with, and they're more willing to contend with, rather than trying to go up some super powered alliance, where they could sure, they can go in there, hit their weaker members, but they're really not making much dent, and they're not really feeling that sense of damage or progress in a sense of PvP, or in a PvP sense, at least from my perspective. I think another thing that needs to change, like I said, with Blood Moon, I think there needs to be some kind of a change there to maybe some more incentives for actually doing PvP in Blood Moon, and not just going in there and just doing the PvE and then leaving once you get what you want. I think there needs to be a little bit more incentive to do the PvP, like like kind of how the reward period is, where you can go in but you can't shield. I think maybe the whole event needs to be kind of like that, or maybe stir it up a bit with certain time zones where you can have it shield active and go in, but not for very long. So it incentivizes people to just go in, do some PvP, get those points, get the really awesome rewards that you can get from Blood Moon, and I think that might help out a little bit. The other thing is the Conquest, which is kind of like the I don't really know what you would call it. It's kind of like a mini game, really. I closely relate it with like Risk, the board game. That gives awesome rewards, but it's extremely one-sided. While I think the idea behind it is really, really cool, I really like it. I just think that it might need to be looked at again from a design perspective and kind of make it a little bit easier for everybody to really participate and really get the full experience out of it, rather than just, say a super alliance from just wiping the board clean within a matter of, minutes. Which, I mean, is all good and great, but, it just doesn't make anybody else really want to participate beyond just participation. Which, I mean, still they get quite a bit of rewards for, but, it's all about, having fun and being able to participate in a greater sense, and being able to, really feel like you're competing. So maybe some kind of a handicap or something to make it more even across the board, I think would be more beneficial to that part of the game, at least in my opinion. Other than that, I think moving forward, I think the game's heading sort of in the right direction. I think they've got an idea, and they're trying to strive for that idea. I think it's going down that very narrow path of where it's really gonna have to be more focused on the pay-to-play players, and the free-to-play players are just gonna be kind of just left to do what they will. Which is kind of a sad thing, but I think it's just one of those issues that most mobile games, especially of this genre, struggle with, especially after 6 months, which is where we're at now, that 6-month mark. They're coming up on half a year. They want to make sure that they can end a full year of release with at least some kind of sound profit from it. Not that they're not already making sound profit from it, but they want to make sure that they end a full year of the game's lifespan on a good note, basically, is what I'm saying. But I think if it keeps going down the path of not really having much PvP content, which I think is what most people in this genre of game really want, is the PvP. They really want that good PvP, 'cause that's the whole point. I think it's gonna struggle pretty hard, especially considering the other competitors to this game in the market. This one's not exactly what I would say in the top tier. It's in the top tier as far as the pay-to-win kind of perspective. You definitely get a lot more for your money, which is great. You also have really good PvE content. PvE content's there. They've got some new mechanics and features which are cool. It's there. The content's there. The ideas are there. The mechanics are available. They just need to figure it out, do what they can. I think other than that, there's not really much else that I can really say. Other than, so far, I'm still having fun with it, although I am starting to see people starting to really feel that grind, and people are starting to get kind of bored because, there's not really anything really to strive for at this point. There's, obviously the research progress, getting the people's buildings up, getting their gear, but there's not really a huge sense of PvP. People were super excited for Blood Moon, and then I think Blood Moon turned out to be more of a disappointment, and that turned a lot of people off. So, you're seeing this decline in good players leaving the game because, they're starting to see that kind of view of where it's like, well, there's not really any good PvP or even ground PvP apart from the events that we can participate in. So I think that's it. Hopefully this gives everybody kind of a sense of at least where I'm at with it. Maybe it's hitting home with a couple other people. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? What do you think they can change? What do you think is good? What would you do if you were one of the developers and you had that kind of call? What would you guys do? Thanks for watching, and as always, guys, I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.